wonderful morning. Let's make sure we've got all systems working just fine here. And go ahead. You can go ahead, talk to me in the chat. And I have some not so welcome news this morning. Apparently, a snowstorm has hit Canada, and my guest, Emmeline Sampson, has been slammed by this snowstorm. And right before we're slated to go live right now, her power went out, and she is not going to be able to join us. Now, she has promised that if the power comes back on, she's going to jump on. And so, I mean, that would be wonderful. But until then, we're going to have to, it's going to be me. And the best I can do is talk about what I talked about in the podcast. And we can go into female egg-laying chameleons and the kind of questions you have about those. And I'll go over the basics of what we need to do to take care of them. And if Emma is able to jump on, then we'll switch over to talk about the zoo. And I'm trying to get another Canadian on to explain the situation. So anyway, we are talking to the Chameleon Academy on YouTube and the Chameleon Enthusiast Facebook group on Facebook. Now, one thing about the people on Facebook, I am going to try to pull it up, but I'm not going to be able to see your names in the chats. That's just a function of the software. Facebook doesn't, because of your privacy, Facebook doesn't want to let me see who is asking the question. So if you have a question and you're on Facebook, then please put your name in it. Just say, here's the question, and then dash your name. And YouTube, hey, I can see your name on YouTube. I say, oh my goodness, wait a minute. I'm going to bring somebody on. Yes, Chris. Can you hear, and can you go ahead, speak?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, we got you. All right, folks. I have brought on Chris Young here, and he has been in the chameleon community for a while, and he is a great researcher. Wonderful thing about Chris is he's in Canada, and he can explain, Chris, what happened to my guest.
So I'm just sort of tuning in. Is whereabouts in Ontario is she? Or she's out on the East Coast, isn't she?
Oh, yeah, she's in Nova Scotia.
Right. So I don't know exactly what happened in Nova Scotia, but I can find out in a quick shake here. Let's see.
So we're figuring out what's going on with our guest, Emmeline Sampson.
And do you know where in Nova Scotia she is?
How big's Nova Scotia?
I mean, like the size of Illinois.
Illinois. That's big. Okay, I don't know where in Nova Scotia she is.
Okay, no problem. I'll figure it out.
Okay, you figure it out. And you're in Ontario.
I am. So I am probably like an hour and a half from Detroit. You could draw a parallel line between sort of where I am and I want to say Chicago. If you went west across the lake, so I am a lot further south than the rest of Canada. So I have the benefit of not getting the crazy weather. Yeah, so there's a super powerful storm hitting Nova Scotia as we speak.
Okay.
It's a nor'easter, so rain, strong winds, icy, mixed. So whenever you have mixed precipitation and freezing rain, frozen water on power lines and stuff like that tends to break them pretty quick. It gets heavy. So that sort of stuff can happen.
All right. Well, what's the weather like where you are?
So it's cold, yeah, about 20 below. So in Americanese, that is,
Wait, 20 below
uh,
Celsius?
yeah.
Wow. Well,
Uh,
okay. That's better than Fahrenheit. All right, and you keep chameleons in this weather, don't you?
I do. I do. But I mean, not in that weather, but I keep them here in this area.
All right. Uh, are you at liberty to speak about this? And everybody, this is a surprise for Chris because I was actually going to bring him on next week and talk about keeping chameleons in cold weather. And I've just gave him a panic link and said, "Please come on." So he's got a surprise here.
So sure, yes, I am at liberty. The greenhouse is it's not super clean. I was planning on doing house cleaning this week, but you know what? We'll make it work, Bill.
I appreciate that. All right, so we're going to have Chris, and you're on mobile right now. Are you able to walk out there?
I have my laptop, but I will walk out there.
Okay. All right.
My wife will assist, and we'll get this going.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome.
All right. So we've got minus 20 Celsius, and
Can you
Chris,
actually see me, Bill?
I can see you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All I can see is you, so I can't see myself.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Well,
so
yes,
we're
we can.
gonna walk out there.
All right. It's looking brisk.
Yeah, it's not warm.
Wow. Of course, I'm in California, so this is horrendous. And this is awesome to see. Everybody who is just joining us, this is Chameleon keeping in the Great White North of Canada.
Yes. Yes. So I can't. Can you?
Yeah, we are. Okay, there we go. We got the picture. Yes. So everybody, we are a little far away from his Wi-Fi now. So this is on location. Anything could happen.
Okay.
All right. So what is the what's the temperature inside that greenhouse?
78 right now.
Oh, nice. And what kind of species?
Yeah, it has a. We have a
I'll let
gas
you
furnace.
give a tour. Okay.
So we. I mean, I have. We focus mainly on and Jacksoni xantholophus. So we have two are here and here.
Do you want to pull one out?
And
Oh, those are the individual baby cages.
These are the individual baby cages, and here is a panther, a little pardalis, right here. Hey, Mr. Man. So he is approximately 2 months.
Oh.
So with the baby cages, obviously a way that one person could take care of in what we sort with.
Want to grab Annie?
Yeah, individually kept chameleons are.
Still have ya?
Yeah, we're seeing you. You break up, but that's to be expected being so far from Wi-Fi.
And here is our youngest, Mr. Danny.
Ah, beautiful.
So he's a young guy. He came to us about 70 grams, and he's pushing like 50 now. So he's growing.
Okay.
So yeah, our focus is generally on Xantholophus and Parsons. Of course, we haven't been able to breed the Parsons yet. We're just sort of starting that project, and but nothing's guaranteed with them. They are tricky to breed. So in the next couple years, hopefully, we get this off the ground. But it, takes time and effort and a real breeding group. And of course, you're dealing with, unfortunately, you're dealing with wild caughts. So that's a whole another can of worms. But the Xantholophus project is good. We brought in multiple pairs of wild-caught Xantholophus several years ago from Kenya. And they arrived in so-so condition. We worked with them and got them up to scratch and sort of in good health. And we're on F2 right now. We're working on F3. So that project's going very well. I have no idea what I'm going to do with all these babies because Canada is not that big of a market, but
You're going to have to expand the market, Chris.
Yeah. I try to convince everybody that, no, get a chameleon. But I don't know, something about the snuggliness
Start with the crested gecko people. Convert them.
turns people off.
All right. Well, how about you've shown us the greenhouse. How about going back into the house, and then we can talk about your challenges and in being in a cold environment, and we can have people who are in a cold environment ask you questions. And so, if you go back to where we get good Wi-Fi, we can have a Q&A session.
The house? Yeah, let's do that. I probably should have mentioned there. I mean, there are a number of logistical sort of snafus that you have to work with respect to a cold temperature, and especially a cold temperature and keeping things in a greenhouse like I do. I mean, you obviously water out to the greenhouse all year, so that's an issue. How do you plumb in running water without burying your water line 6 feet below the ground? So there's a number of things there. But yeah,
well, let's start from the. I'm sorry. Yeah, let's just start from the beginning as to, are there any temperature? That's the obvious one.
Right.
What do you need to do to keep them in a good temperature?
Well, so I mean, using a greenhouse is ideal. You get natural day-night cycles. It needs to be heated. I don't care where you are in Canada. Maybe on the West Coast, but even on a sunny day in January here, the sun will heat the greenhouse quite a bit. At night, it's not going to do it, and we hit 21 below last night, so that would be -4 Fahrenheit, -5 Fahrenheit for you guys. So you need to heat the greenhouse somehow. Electricity it's mind-bogglingly expensive. So gas worked for us. You can use propane, you can use electricity. I'm sure if you want to run a 220 volt oven line out there and run electricity, you can, but it'll be a second mortgage payment in electricity.
Uh-huh. Okay, so you're running gas, and that's how you
Yeah.
keep it warm. What is the effect of humidity when you have this?
So, I mean, that's a good question. I often say that keeping in a greenhouse is sort of, you get the flip side of everybody else's problem in keeping. So I don't have a problem getting high humidity at night. I have a problem getting the humidity down during the day.
Mhm.
Um, Likewise, I don't have a problem getting a good temperature drop at night. So things are a bit flipped in the greenhouse. But with respect to humidity, I have a ventilation system in there that from lights on to lights off, it actually exchanges all the air in the greenhouse once every hour. So that helps keep the humidity down. That being said, my usual daytime humidities float around 50, 55. So they're on the higher end. But you know, it's what I have to work with. So and we're exchanging in a sufficient amount of air. So I haven't had any humidity related issues.
Okay. Now, do you keep any chameleons outside the greenhouse?
All my chameleons go outside for as long as I can. So usually that's May till October 1st. So, I can usually get 5 months outdoors of the greenhouse
Okay.
outside, but I keep none in the house.
All right. All right. And so when you're uh, picking your caging, let's talk about caging up north. Now, you've got a greenhouse, so it's a little bit of a different situation. So, so compare how you would use screen cage, hybrid cage. I didn't see any glass cages in there, but I saw screen and hybrid.
So generally, I mean, in a greenhouse, you don't really have the challenge of trying to retain humidity. It's just humid. You're
Okay.
fighting against it during the day. Also it's an odd shape. So I basically build all my cages. If I were keeping indoors, and when we brought in that wild group of Xantholophus, we had our quarantine facilities inside the house. So I do know, I have kept chameleons inside the house, and I think the
Okay.
only way to accomplish sort of the humidity specs that you're looking for, both day and night, is with something that's hybrid or possibly even glass.
Okay.
Just the right now inside the house, our humidity is at like 22% or something like that. So I don't know how you're going to combat that in an all screen cage inside a house. In the greenhouse, it's a little different. So everything's screened, and it's not screen per se. I use hardware cloth.
Okay.
Just it's got to last, and if a raccoon or a mink ever gets in the greenhouse or gets anywhere, it'll go through screen a lot easier than it'll go through hardware cloth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of wildlife do you have to worry about?
So, I mean, it's mainly raccoons, and we do have mink, although, the mink that we get around here seem to get their fill by raiding everybody's backyard ponds and eating their goldfish. So we haven't had as much of a problem. Raccoons are mainly the big one. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about things like snakes or, I mean, birds of prey can be an issue, but again, if we're using hardware cloth rather than screen, I mean, that's a pretty good protector for everything. Um, and having three dogs outside also tends to deter predators.
How about ants?
So we get ants. I don't. I see them. I do see them around the cages. I see them in the greenhouse occasionally. I don't find that they pose a huge problem. Like we don't have fire ants or something like that are likely to, swarm a baby chameleon and kill it.
Okay.
We have, our native ants are basically very tiny brick ants or your black ants, carpenter ants, but none of them are really focused on sort of attacking. Wouldn't you? I would be surprised if you had a problem with chameleons with ants.
Okay. Are you up for taking some questions?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, from other people. All right,
Yeah.
this is Kelly Zonner. Are you able to see the question on the screen?
Uh, is it? I can
It's
see.
That's okay. I can read it to you. So Kelly's asking, do you farm your own crickets or feeders out in the greenhouse as well?
So we certainly do breed as many feeders as we possibly can, be they crickets or superworms or things like that. Certainly, with the size of collection we have, I mean, we're talking 20 some adults plus we're approaching 80 babies. That's a lot of mouths to feed, and it wouldn't be financially feasible unless you do farm your own bugs. Yes, certainly.
Okay. What kind of feeders do you have available to you? I mean, I know I'm talking to you as if you're in a foreign country, and
Yeah, no. I mean, it's a good question. So there tends to there is a blanket ban on exotic insect imports into Canada for the most part. There are two species of cockroach that are legal here in Canada, or should I say they're not illegal because they're established in greenhouses across the country, and those are the Suriname roach and the Australian cockroach. And we have had some promising news on another front. Apparently, someone has gotten permission to import discoid roaches, as they are also found in greenhouses across the country. So we do have access to some roach species, certainly crickets, both banded and your house crickets. Superworms, silkworms. Silkworms are hit and miss here. BSFL, basically the entire smorgasbord you can get here, minus, the huge variety of roaches.
Okay. Sarah has a question here. She's asking, do you have issues with the greenhouse getting too hot in the summers?
So if I try to keep anything in there past about May 1st, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a death trap in there. We take the doors off and come April, and it's still iffy. So yeah, no, all my chameleons come outside in fresh air as soon as humanly possible, because it does. I mean, it would get atrociously warm in there.
Okay. So what was your decision process in selecting Jackson's Parsons? It sounds like you've got some Montaignes going, but then you threw in Pardalis. Was there a consideration of your environment, or you just picked what you liked? In
I
good taste,
mean,
by the way.
I think it's a little bit of both. Thank you. I think it's a little bit of both. Certainly, I have stayed away from certain species that won't work with the conditions I keep them in. So there's some of those, if it makes sense to say, low altitude montagnes from Cameroon, like Montium and Cristatus, that tend to want sort of that stable temperature 24/7 and very little in the way of nighttime drops, that I couldn't accommodate while keeping everybody else happy. Especially the Xantholophus and we have one Caliptratus who was our first chameleon, and
Excellent.
we've
Excellent.
yes,
Sarah,
yes.
take note.
Sarah Kella here will be. She loves those, I hear. So everybody send her pictures of your veils.
All right. We have a question from John Courtney Smith.
Yeah.
Is the glass UV passing?
It is not. And so, God, wouldn't that be nice? I had priced out UV transmitting acrylic and UV transmitting glass, and it was just out of the budget when we built it. The other issue with a hard surface glazing on a greenhouse is that your R value goes way down. Like even the twin wall polys and stuff like that, your insulation value, goes way down. A double inflated hoop tunnel, where you have a pocket of 6 to 8 inches of air in between the layers, really gives you the highest insulation value you can in a greenhouse. So unfortunately, the trade-off is no, it doesn't transmit UVB. So we do have to use UVB bulbs in the greenhouse all the time.
Okay.
And we use Arcadia mostly.
Okay.
There you go, John.
So what kind of bulbs do you use now? I mean, we're talking about something different. When I generally talk about bulbs, I'm telling people how to UVB radiate a cage. Now you're taking it to a much bigger level when you're are you doing individual cages, or are you doing
We are. Yeah,
okay.
We are. There's a bank of 6 Parsons enclosures on the right side. I don't know if you saw that, but each of those has a 4 bulb 4 foot fixture over top. And there are 2 UVB bulbs and 2 daylight bulbs in there. I measure UVI very, very carefully, and the situation and the foliage, the amount of foliage in there, my UVIs are perfect. But in a 6 or 6.5 foot tall by 4 foot wide cage, a single 6% UVB is iffy, especially if you're on a no D3 supplement regime. So I try to, solar meter is my best friend.
Okay. Well, what is your supplementation routine?
So I use Arcadia Earth Pro A at every feeding, and for the last year, I have been mixing it half and half with just plain calcium. I'm sort of on this minimalist supplementation kick. That is certainly not recommended for everybody, and it requires you spending a lot of time out there, a lot of time with your chameleons, a lot of time monitoring things and stuff like that. But so I for the past 3 years we have been 0D and 0 preformed A, so no fat soluble vitamins in this household, and it seems to be going good. But again, this is something that monitor carefully. As soon as I see eye issues, tongue projection issues, stuff like that, that would be a red flag for me. I've been fortunate enough not to see that, yeah.
So no eye issues, no tongue issues, and no preformed vitamin A. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah. Now, I mean, I go to sort of ridiculously monumentous sort of efforts with my gut load. So I want to say I attribute some of, my success to that. Although I could just be lucky.
Yeah. And for everybody watching, this is one of the mysteries we have in the chameleon community is vitamin A, preformed vitamin A. A number of prominent keepers don't give preformed vitamin A in the supplementation, and there's absolutely no problems with eyes or tongue. But then we see somebody out in the wilds of social media coming and saying, hey, I've got vitamin A deficiency. I've got these problems that are fixed by giving them vitamin A. And so it is a big mystery that we are actively trying to figure out as to why can people spend, you talk to Mario over in the Netherlands. It's been what, 10, 20 years since he's ever given any sort of vitamins. He just does B pollen and calcium. So why is it he is so successful with so many rare species, but Caloptratus, which is kind of a tank, as long as you give him UVB, now has vitamin A deficiency. So big question mark, still working on that. Now, you have a greenhouse and you have all these lights in the greenhouse. Do you have problems with humidity and electronics?
It's not so bad. Again, you have to use your head a bit about airflow, where you're going to place your fans. A nice fan blowing across the top of the cage, and as long as your lighting isn't touching the actual glazing material of the greenhouse, I don't see issues with sort of shorts. I mean, the whole greenhouse, there's 3 circuits out there. They're all on ground fault circuit interrupted breakers, and they don't trip off. So I don't get rust in most of my lights. So it's really about fan placement. It's about making sure stuff doesn't actually touch the glazing, which is where condensation usually builds up. And that ability to sort of draw out all the air at once over the period of an hour and replace it with fresh air certainly contributes to keeping those sorts of problems at bay.
Okay. All right. So let's well, first of all, anybody, I'm going to start talking about the situation of chameleons in Canada, but if you have questions about greenhouses, please now's the time to put them in. Greenhouses or keeping chameleons in a cold environment, a cold, dry environment. It's me here in California. I am very blessed as far as chameleon weather. But someone like Chris has got to put extra attention to every single parameter. And so he's a great person to ask questions of. So we'll just let anybody go ahead and put some questions. And you can hear this is, by the way, this is a message from John Courtney Smith about your vitamin A issue. You're not lucky. Gut load is vital. Which,
Thanks, John. Yeah. I certainly have learned a lot from discussions that you and Bill have had. So that's doing no small part to you and Bill. So thank you.
Yes. Well, here's another. Oh no, there we go. There's another insight from him, saying the bigger the species, the greater the chance they encounter whole animal prey. Greater need for preformed vitamin A. Smaller the species, mostly insect only, and are unlikely to eat whole animals. Lower preformed need, which makes sense because we're all wondering, how is it that a carpet chameleon can get the preformed vitamin A by eating a vertebrate?
Yeah. Brachysia are not tagging a lot of mice out there. So
Yes.
No, I mean that's a fascinating discussion that I would love to go on for hours about. So sometime when anybody wants to have that discussion, I'm all for it.
Yeah, Chris leads a Facebook group called Chameleon Philosophy, and he throws up these questions and just lets everybody go at it. So if you're if you love discussing things into the nitty gritty, that's a good place for it. So, all right, so let's talk about chameleons in Canada and what's the situation as far as breeders, the species. Yeah, it's just an open-ended question. I'll just let you talk.
Sure. And I do you have any rules about plugging breeders up here, or should we keep everything sort of anonymous, or
You're completely free to
Okay.
say anything you want as long as you're not saying
Yeah,
mean
yeah.
things.
Yes. Well, I'm quite a nice guy, a real sweetheart, as you know.
Yes, that's what I hear.
So look, Canada has it's a tiny community compared to the U.S. Our population is right about 1/10 of your population. So say there's 5,000 chameleon fanatics in the U.S. There's likely to only be 500 here. Or sorry, is that wrong? 50, 500? Anyway, so it's a much smaller community. It's a much smaller market. Breeders are less likely to sort of pick a rare species that might not be as marketable because no one will buy it.
Okay.
Versus in the U.S., you can do lateralis, you can do What's Nash doing? Eliotai, and you can pick stuff like that, and you can still find a place to sell it. So Canada, it's a bit special in that regard, in that it's not that appealing to someone who wants to go into a rarer species. Now, that being said, there are a number of us in the community up here that are good friends, like very good friends, that sort of collaborate on working with rarer stuff that you wouldn't see. And we're not so concerned about marketability and the ability to sell. It's really about sort of getting a foot in the door of establishing a stable captive population, so that in the future, if some nut ever wants to own captive bred Xantholophus, or captive bred cristatus is another one that a number of people are working with up here. They have the opportunity. There are also a number of excellent breeders up here working with some of your more common species, like Pardalis. Simply Chameleons does a great job with their Mesoala. Sun Valley Reptiles works with Ambelobe, Nosy Bay. Peachtree Chameleons is doing Nosy Bay. And Ambelobe, I think. Yeah. So, God, I know I'm forgetting somebody. Somebody's going to kill me and be like, "Why didn't you say my name?" And of course we have Chameleons Canada, Edgar Tapia's company, that brings in just magnificent wild caughts. That of course, first time owners or hobbyists, wild caught is probably not the best thing you want to go with, but for starting a breeding project and fresh blood, it's certainly Edgar has the stuff that comes in is so nice and so clean.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Oh. And by the way, if anybody who
it.
has joined us, you may be wondering, saying that doesn't look like Emma Lynn. Right before this interview came on, Emma was hit with a huge snowstorm and lost all of her power. So we're going to have to do that interview hopefully next week, and we'll see when we can reschedule that. But I was able to find another Canadian, Chris Young, who jumped in at the last minute. And so we're talking to him about keeping chameleons in a colder environment and what you have to do. And we're talking about what the chameleon community situation is in Canada. So we're in the question and answer session. If you have any questions, put it in the chat, and we'll talk about it. All right. So where do you see you've got? I heard a lot of panther breeders in there. Now you've got Parsons and Jacksons, and so what do you see the market as growing beyond panthers?
Look, I mean, there will always be some demand for a captive bred male Parsons chameleon. It's the catalog, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, whether or not there's a market for 100 eggs, 100 hatchlings, I have no idea. Personally, I don't care if there isn't enough people up here to buy them. We will certainly do a CITES export and get them to you guys in the States or something. But it's really like, I don't have any pretensions of making money selling reptiles or breeding reptiles. In fact, I assume it will be the ruin of me. However,
you are in good company.
I have a young niece and nephew who are so fascinated by animals. And so I am driven to sort of try to establish stable captive populations of one or two species. And I think that's all anybody can do. But you know what, I should plug, so there are a couple people working with Cristatus up here.
Okay.
We went through some, and Martine Desjardins, I believe you have spoken with her before about Millerai. So she is working with Cristatus along with Alex Peach, and they are doing excellent work. We have captive born babies now. So,
Wonderful.
and those, talk about an marketable chameleon. I mean, those things hide
Yeah.
90%, right? But, through the dedication of the community and, everybody working together and stuff, we got them into the country, and we got good people working with them. And in the future, if there's anybody nutty enough to want to own a Cristatus, they can. So there are a number of people who are starting to sort of expand their ideas about what species they could have. Not to knock Pardalis at all. I mean, those guys are great and they've done so much. But I do get people asking for Jacksons. They love the horns. Everybody likes Parsons. Cristatus is a niche market, but there are people out there. So yeah.
Okay. Well,
I see
let's go ahead.
Hypercolor Cams has asked a question.
Yeah, let's bring that one up.
Okay, so what is the size and cost for a greenhouse and how many years of use will you get from it? So my greenhouse is 12 feet wide by 24 feet long by about 8 feet tall in the center. It is an inflated double layer hoop tunnel. You will get about 5 years out of the plastic material, and then you replace it. The cost of a kit like that, you're probably looking about $2,500 without the gas furnace and without the plumbing in the gas. And the replacement of the glazing is probably going to cost you about $1,200 every 5 years. What it costs to run, I mean, natural gas is fairly cheap. And if it's as insulated as a greenhouse can be, I bet you we spend about $40 a month on gas to heat it. So does that answer your question?
I think so. Let's go on. This is from Kelly Zonner. Lockdowns were way more strict in Canada versus the USA. Did the lockdown adversely affect your supply chain?
Not supply chain in terms of equipment like UVB lights, not particularly. For some reason, in Canada, we have this. We've never had a shortage of, say, Arcadia products that I understand the US is sort of still fighting with. So in terms of equipment like that, not particularly. In terms of feeders, I would probably not be the best person to ask because I purchase feeders so rarely, because we breed most of our own. In terms of, I mean, what else is there?
Just
I mean,
feeders and equipment.
Yeah, feeders and equipment. So no, not really. I didn't see a huge problem with supply chains. Certainly, there was a time last year when Madagascar actually got they banned interprovincial or the Malagasy equivalent of a province. They banned travel in between them, so the collectors couldn't get to wherever they needed to collect certain chameleons. So that was a bit of a hiccup, but it didn't last very long.
Okay. Well, here's one. Let's see. This is
Do I use
Marion
propane?
Twenson. Do you use propane for fuel or is it piped in natural gas?
Natural gas, piped in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what are your future plans?
Well, I mean, we're just concentrating on Xantholophus and Parsoni. So by the end of the month, we will be 4.4 Parsoni. So that is a decent breeding group. My fellow collaborator in Nut, Alex Peach of Peachtree Chameleons, has also brought in a couple pairs, I believe. So we're sort of working closely together. Besides racing to see who can be the first one,
Yeah, good race to have.
I mean, they've never been bred in this country. So that's sort of the main. That's where the effort's going. You know, and whether or not we will be able to sell any babies, if it ever happens, you know, 2 years down the road. So the nice thing about the greenhouse is you can offer brumation temperatures a little easier than trying to cool down a room in your house. So fingers crossed, within the next year or so, we will have a successful breeding. And then it's just the very small and easy task of incubating those Parson's eggs.
Yeah, no problem.
No problem.
Oh, all right. Well, we're going to go ahead and bring this to a close. If anybody has any last final questions as I'm winding down here, just throw them on up. And Chris, definitely want to thank you very much for stepping up to the plate at the literal last second.
No problem.
And coming on and saying, oh, okay. Well, here we have one. Matthew Gallup is asking, what is your supplementation like for your Parsons?
It's the same as for all my chameleons, and that is, well, for the past year anyway, it's basically our Arcadia Earth Pro A mixed half and half with plain calcium. And I use that at every feeding. I should also add that there's something, because I keep outdoors for, 5 months of the year, they go through a long period where they're eating all sorts of wild bugs that are obviously not dusted with anything. So, that may play a significant role in sort of their overall nutrition. But yeah, my supplementation for my Parsons is same as all my chameleons. Earth Pro A mixed half and half with plain calcium at every feeding, and that's it.
Okay. And Ray Tripp, hey, Ray's been very good. He jumps on these lives all the time. Glad you made it, Ray. All right. Well, then we're going to go ahead and wind this down. And Chris, it's been wonderful talking with you. And thank you, everybody who joined us. It's great to have this community and have this ability to talk and converse. And we will keep track of what's going on with Chris in the future. So goodbye, everybody. You can go ahead and wave goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.